Right now, you are wearing clothes. You put them on this morning without a second thought. You chose a color, maybe a style. You covered yourself so automatically that the act barely registered as a decision at all. But here is the thing. That habit so ordinary it feels like breathing is one of the most mysterious innovations in the entire history of your species. And the reason your ancestors first picked up an animal's skin and wrapped it around their bodies has almost nothing to do with what you think. You probably assume the story goes something like this. Humans needed warmth. It got cold, they grabbed some fur and survived. Simple, practical, obvious. The real answer is far stranger, and it starts not with cold or warmth or survival. It starts with a tiny parasite that lives in your clothing right now. Your body louse is not the same creature as your head louse. They look almost identical. Same size, same color, nearly the same DNA. But they live in completely different places. Head lice grip onto hair, body lice cling to fabric, and that difference, that one behavioral split between two almost identical insects, is how scientists figured out when your ancestors first started wearing clothes. David Reed, a biologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History, spent 5 years sequencing the DNA of human lice from populations all over the world. His team published their results in 2011 in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution. What they found was startling. Body lice diverged from head lice approximately 170,000 years ago. Think about what that means. Body lice need fabric to survive. They cannot exist without it. They are so dependent on clothing that the moment your ancestor first began wearing something regularly enough for lice to evolve a new lifestyle inside it, the parasite's DNA locked in the date. 170,000 years ago. Your ancestors were already draped in animal skins during the second to last ice age. Not the last one, the one before it. They had been clothing themselves for tens of thousands of years before the world froze over again, but here is where it gets complicated. Because covering yourself in animal fur for warmth is one thing, and turning that animal skin into something you choose, something that says something about who you are, that is an entirely different story. Archaeologist Ian Gilligan at the University of Sydney has spent his career building a model of how clothing evolved. Not just when, but why. And the picture he draws is not the simple thermal survival story you might expect. His research, published in the book Climate, Clothing and Agriculture in Prehistory, argues that clothing passed through distinct phases. Simple thermal protection came first. Loose animal skins draped over the body. Functional, temporary, picked up when needed, discarded when not. For thousands of generations, your ancestors wore clothes the same way you might grab an umbrella. Situational, reactive, not yet identity, not yet culture. Then something shifted. Around 40,000 years ago in the caves of southwestern Europe, a different kind of tool appeared, an eyed needle, a small sliver of bone with a tiny hole at one end. It seems modest. It seems almost trivial against the backdrop of spears, flint blades, cave paintings, but Gilligan argues this was a revolution as profound as any other in the Paleolithic. The eyed needle meant tailored clothing, fitted seams. Garments that were shaped to the contours of a specific body. Clothing that was no longer just cover, it was construction. And the moment you construct something to fit yourself, you are no longer just keeping warm. You are making a statement. Around the same period, at the other end of the African continent, your ancestors were already experimenting with body decoration in ways that hint at something deeper than survival. At Blombos Cave on the southern coast of South Africa, archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood and his colleagues excavated layers of human occupation stretching back 100,000 years. What they found included shells strung as beads, abstract geometric engravings, and chunks of ochre, a red iron-rich pigment shaped and ground into powder almost certainly used to paint the body. Your ancestors were painting themselves red 100,000 years ago. They were not doing it to stay warm. They were doing it to be seen. Here is the tension at the heart of the clothing story. Two parallel drives were happening at the same time. One was thermal, biological survival, keep the body from losing heat. The other was social, symbolic identity, signals something about who you are to the people around you. Most of the time, scholars have focused on the first one. Cold drove clothing, ice age drove clothing, survival drove clothing. But Gilligan's model suggests the two drives were always intertwined. And the second one, the social one, became dominant faster than you might expect. Think about your own wardrobe. How many items in it exist purely to keep you from dying of cold? Now how many exist to say something, to fit a certain image, to signal a job, a mood, an identity, a tribe? The proportion has been roughly the same for a very long time. There's a moment in history that illustrates this perfectly. When European explorers first made contact with indigenous Fujian people at the southern tip of South America in the 1800s, they encountered groups who lived in one of the harshest climates on Earth, near freezing winds, driving rain, sub-zero temperatures, and wore almost no clothing at all. They coated their bodies in animal fat instead. They built fires constantly. The Western observers were astonished. How could people survive like that? What the observers missed was that these same people had elaborate systems of body paint. They decorated themselves with ochre and clay. They wore specific pigments to signal status, readiness for ceremony, belonging to a group. The visual language was rich and sophisticated. It just did not involve fabric. This tells you something important. The need to signal identity, to mark yourself, to say something to the people looking at you, that drive is so fundamental it found expression even where fabric was not available. Even where staying warm required a completely different strategy. Your ancestors wore clothes before they needed to. And when they did need to, they immediately made clothing about more than warmth. Here is the counterintuitive truth about the shirt on your back right now. It is a survival technology. It is also a symbol system. It is also a social contract. It tells people where you belong, what you do, whether you can be trusted, whether you are in mourning, whether you are celebrating, whether you are dangerous, whether you are approachable. A huge amount of information about you travels across the room before you say a single word, and it travels through your clothing. This is not a modern development. It is not Instagram. It is not fashion weeks or fast fashion or brand logos. It is 170,000 years old. Your body louse knows it. Your DNA knows it. The ancient ochre-stained caves of South Africa know it. You started dressing for warmth. You kept dressing for something far more powerful. And right now, without thinking about it, you are still doing exactly what your ancestors did on a frozen African plateau before recorded history began. You woke up, you looked at what you had, and you chose how to be seen. That choice is older than language, older than agriculture, older than every civilization that has ever risen or fallen on this planet. The real reason your ancestors started wearing clothes is the same reason you opened your closet this morning.